as the First Ladies take on possibly unpopular opinions, if not outright damaging causes or positions, their husbands are reminded of who they married. Starting off with Eleanor, she's in a rather complicated time in her life. Her good friend Louis has just died, and while she and Louis didn't get along all the time, at the same time, he's one of the few that actually recognized her potential. And yes, even though he didn't really push for her to be part of the Roosevelt administration, at the same time, that was one of her friends who did recognize that she could potentially be president one day. But while that's sad and unfortunate, when it comes to Eleanor and Hick, those two have grown closer to the point where J. Edgar Hoover's able to catch wind of them having a relationship. And when Roosevelt finds out about it, Franklin, he's not necessarily happy about it, but at the same time, he understands that since the loneliness, perhaps having a lack of purpose or feeling that way, so he decides to tell Eleanor not only will he turn a blind eye to what's going on between Eleanor and Hick, but he'll even sweeten the deal for Eleanor, for lack of a better way to put it, and put Hick onto the administration in terms of having her document the New Deal program and how it's rolling out across the country. For the second topic, we're going to go into Betty Ford, and her issue is that Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney do not like the fact that she's working on the Equal Rights Amendment, and again, that passed across the country, even though Gerald Ford, when he was in Congress, he voted for it. But now with him being president and fears of Reagan and him taking the far right with him to squash Gerald Ford in the primaries, which would be a huge embarrassment because a sitting president getting challenged in the primaries, never mind losing the primaries, is not common, and I'm not even sure if it's happened before, and if it has, it's probably so rare that you would have to be like really into history to know which specific president that happened to. But either way, one of the main things we have to talk about is the fact that Gerald Ford, when he's approached by Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, he shuts them both down when it comes to what his wife is doing. But in private, Gerald and Betty do have a little bit of an issue about what she's doing, what the administration wants, him having to go and worry about Reagan and campaigning. So as much as he wants to support his wife, he also recognizes the politics of his situation, and because of that, Betty willingly steps down from pursuing having an ERA pass in all states, or at least the majority of states, so it can be ratified as part of the Constitution. And she's not happy about it, but at the very least, while she lost that battle, she did get Susanne, who's really starting to feel the weight of having Secret Service and a bunch of other issues. She gets her a prom at the White House, which granted is not a notable huge victory, but at least it's something. So if Betty's not happy, at least her daughter is. Speaking of daughters, Michelle and Malia have the issue of dealing with Barack, who is not very progressive when it comes to same-sex marriage. Civil unions, he's all for it. But as for actual marriage where men and women are on the same ground as two men, two women, trans people in terms of getting married, he's worried about losing the South. He's worried about losing the churches. And with that, he's being very conservative on the topic. But with the way that this show pushes it, between Malia having friends who have parents that are gay, and then Michelle being the one who told Biden to say something, according to the show, that led Barack to be forced in order to come out in favor of gay marriage. So in terms of highlights, it's definitely just Gerald Ford and his relationship with Betty, because one of the things I really appreciate with them continually is just them being the best relationship of the three couples we see. Franklin, clearly, him and Eleanor, if they're even decent friends at this point, that's probably the best that the thing's going to come out of it. Him being okay with her having an affair just as long as she, keeps it subtle, or at the very least, still does the work that he needs her to do when it comes to his campaign and his administration, yet not being messy. When it comes to Barack, let's not forget when Rahm Emanuel was going at Michelle's neck and Barack was kind of like, I'm not going to deal with the two people that kind of are integral to my personal life and my career the most. Instead, I'm just going to try to simmer things down instead of checking Rahm like he probably should have. Or maybe he did in real life, we don't know. as the show says when it first starts out, it takes creative license. Anyway, but compare those two to Gerald Ford, who straight up shut down Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. Totally different dynamic, totally different experience. And even though Gerald Ford wasn't elected to office, the fact that he still had it in him to shut these two men down and tell them to keep his wife's name out of their mouths, it just does something for you. And it really continues to show that they really want to boost the Fords when it comes to this show. And even though they may not have the longest in terms of the presidency, or maybe the most notable impact when it comes to what the average person may learn in school, in terms of being a couple in this show, they can't be outdone. Michelle and Barack don't really have the cute moments that Gerald and Betty do. Eleanor and I would even say Eleanor and Hick don't even have cute moments like Gerald and Betty do at this point. They, in terms of Gerald and Betty, that is, are the it couple of this show, and it does so much for both actors that they have this partnership that is not something we see with anybody else, whether they're married or not. Another highlight, and I know it's kind of a weird one, is just a reminder that as much as Obama is a lovable and charming person, when it comes to him as a politician, he did have his flaws. Whether it's not being gung-ho when it comes to the rights of gay people. I mean, they could go into his own drone strike thing and how that inspired new terrorists, but totally different thing. But long story short, I appreciate that they're showing just as much as Michelle's being shown as a human being who is more than the persona that we know her for, that is. They're doing the same thing with Barack and showing that as much as he is a likable man, there are things when it comes to him being a husband, when it comes to him being a president, to him being just a person or even a father, there are spaces and places where he could improve, and he is by no means perfect. In terms of On the Fence, it's just Eleanor's storyline. I feel that when it comes to Eleanor, she has basically fallen from grace. That woman who was so dynamic and quotable in the first episode, she's no longer that person. Her storyline increasingly is just kind of, I feel like they want to so deeply focus on what made her different in terms of, her potentially being a lesbian and, being well educated and from money, that I don't know. I don't want to say it stripped her of her relatability, but something feels like it's missing now, and I can't put my finger on it, but it definitely makes me feel that the Eleanor who we met in the first episode to the Eleanor we know now in episode 6, those two are not the same, and I want to say it's getting worse, but hopefully it'll get better. I mean, I don't really have much interest or faith in this whole Eleanor and Hick affair, but you never know. Something interesting or something worthy of the time dedicated to Eleanor could be good. Maybe. Overall, as Michelle rebounds and Betty stays in a prominent position on the show, sadly, Eleanor continues to be in this odd place that you couldn't imagine her being in based off of what we saw in the first episode.